In May, the board guidance was presented and approved by the board, and that was the start point for action of the staff. On the 22nd of August, we had a 5-year budget roundtable. It consisted of the board and the finance committee, another extra duty I gave everybody. And it was to review all the aspects of the integrated financial plan and to open the dialogue about the preserve renovation. If you were at that meeting, you know that Larry Santora provided some thoughts about potential pathways forward, which drove future actions. On 11 September, the Golf Committee hosted a golf town hall that was a Troon-centric event. Based on the work on the 22 August meeting, we sent 3 courses of action to Troon for their evaluation: a 4-year plan, a 2-year plan, and a 1-year plan to examine the pluses and minuses related to the preserve golf course renovation. This was essential to lay the foundation for our work in building the 5-year budget. Troon provided a recommendation. The board received it and accepted it. On the 23rd of September, we convened another budget planning roundtable. This consisted of the board members, the finance committee, and the golf committee. The board received the golf committee recommendation regarding the preserve golf course renovation, and the finance committee presented a way to make the component fund line for the preserve golf course a reality. The idea had been recently discussed in a finance committee meeting and was advanced by our assistant treasurer, Larry Santora. In the middle of all this, draft 1 was issued by the staff to the board and the finance committee so we could go to work. And to work we did. To wrap this up, last Friday, we convened another 4.5-hour budget meeting with the board and the finance committee. Today, you will receive the details and outcomes of that 2025 budget. More than $300,000 in expenses were removed from the budget between draft 1 and draft 2. We squeezed the staff pretty hard, and it came at a cost. We're eliminating the dining rewards program. We're eliminating the staffing for the links. We reduced the allocation for water for the Mountain View Golf Course because of the turf reduction initiative and the cost savings we should experience because of the enhancements in our new irrigation system. And because of Bill McGinn, is Bill here? Yeah. Because of his efforts and twisting the arms of the board over the last 2 weeks, we found more savings in the operations fund because, let me see how I get this right. Savings related to maintaining our 7 bodies of water. Did I get that right, Bill? So I have some thanks to issue before we get into the meat of this presentation. I want to thank Mark Eckert, our treasurer. He's the guy that we put the ruck on his back at the beginning of the year. And I've got a spreadsheet in my notebook. If I opened it up, it would be about this big, about how he was going to take the board, the staff, and the finance committee through this exercise. Congratulations, Mark. Here we are. Walter, can you come up here, man? I want to take this moment, and I've been doing this in every public venue I have, is to express my appreciation to Walter. In April, we told Walter we were going to change our governance mechanism here in the community, and we were going to bring on a chief operating officer. And so Walter had the option to execute what was in his contract, which was to leave at 30 days after I advised him of that, or be willing to stay on. Now, to tell you the truth, we asked Walter to stay. But Walter's made the decision that he wants to move on and do other things in life. And so his last day with us is going to be the 22nd of November. The reason why I'm taking all this time to tell you is because every resident in this community should be grateful for the fact that Walter Yazzie showed up every day and kept the reins firmly in his hand to lead our staff, to continue to deliver the services to you, our residents. And I'm very proud of that effort. But most importantly, over the last month, I've had him in a headlock. When we issued our revised guidance to him a few weeks ago, the work has resulted in cutting the ask of the residents in half. Instead of a 6% POA increase, we're going to have a 2.9, and that came with a lot of work on behalf of the staff. And that doesn't just happen, that requires leadership. And so, Walter, again, I want to say thank you. Of all the thank yous I'm giving here this morning, you get the biggest one. If you would, help me. You're going to hear from Walter in a few minutes. He's part of the presentation staff, so thanks, Walter. I need to thank Terry Dempsey, our Director of Finance. I try to leave Terry alone, but over the last couple of months, that's been impossible, both on what's happening in this year and trying to build this budget for next year. As you all know, I briefed you a couple months ago that we were significantly underwater in our operating budget for this year, and over the last 90 days, that picture seems to be changing into our favor. But it doesn't come without a lot of discussion and sitting around the table and trying to understand what's going on. So Terry, thank you for everything you've done for me, for Mark, for the board. I want to thank our staff. I want to thank our staff. You know, I see Alan sitting here, I see Bill sitting here, Dale. We've shoved the staff around pretty hard here, and I want to thank you for leaning out this budget. I want to thank the Troon team led by Matt Malloy, and Mike is sitting here, who came in twice. They came in for the town hall, and then they came in for the round table to offer their advice and expertise to both the board and the finance committee and the golf committee. And of course, I need to thank Campbell and the finance committee, and he's going to tell you the saddle we put on him. And finally, I need to thank my board mates. I've asked an awful lot of you this year, and certainly with all these things that I've laid out here, I think there was 10 hours of meetings just devoted for us to be together to work ourselves through this board. So I want to say thanks to you all. And that's my conclusion of my comments. I'm going to turn this over to Mark.
Okay, since I'm going to have to look at the screen, I'm going to try to take this thing out. Okay, so yes, the first step of this is to, well, kind of repeat a little bit what you just heard, which is kind of talking about the timeline. But I still got it on my agenda anyway, so I'm going to talk about it real briefly anyway, even though Matt kind of did a good job. So the first slide, whenever we can get to it. Maybe the second slide. This is the overview. So, okay, one more. Okay, so this is the overview, just a brief overview of the budget timeline. It was a lot more detailed than this, but this is basically where we started. May, we gave a board guidance to the staff. June, we provided opportunities for homeowners, the clubs, and the staff for requests on anything they wanted to have. From an increase in assets or budget or anything. June or July, the staff prepared and worked on the draft number 1. During July and August, there were many, many meetings, finance committee meetings, board reviews, open working meetings. Matt gave a little more specific details on that, but lots of work. August 8th was the draft when the staff did their presentations, what we used to call business plans. but it was their opportunity to stand in front of the board, their residents, finance committee, and each staff member gave their presentation on their department, what they saw, what they were looking for, what the challenges were, et cetera. On September 12th, the staff actually then, after a lot of input, presented their draft number 1. Again, this was a public meeting to the board and the residents and the finance committee. During September and October, again, many open meetings with the committee, the board, including the homeowners to talk through, make the changes that are necessary to try to move forward. And then on October 31st, the staff is going to present draft number 2, which is a culmination of a lot of work. And again, then on November 20th is when the final board approval actually occurs. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is the draft number 2 to presentation. Next slide. So the initial board guidance, which was done, like Matt said, back I think in May, these were some of the main headings. Basically, we told the staff to focus on business growth opportunities, to reduce the net costs for any of the income-producing amenities, particularly golf and food and beverage, which by far are the largest that have the biggest impact. We specifically wanted food and beverage to utilize all of the good information they got from our Real Foods consultant study. The cost center departments focused on cost control and improving productivity, but we also, while ensuring the quality lifestyle, so we didn't want to cut so deeply that it's going to affect the enjoyment of why people moved here. So that's always a balancing act that you always have to do here, and understand that the reason people live and moved here is to enjoy their lifestyle. So to the extent that you can ensure that, obviously you're always looking for cost control and productivity enhancements. On the capital budget requests, again, we focused on improving operations efficiency, cost reductions. There were, of course, a few requests from residents, some of which have been included. And then leases, basically to just use leases only when they're financially beneficial to the HOA. And then for reserve budget requests, basically, again, the same thing. The reserve study, of course, is only a forecast, so that all the requests that go into the 2025 budget had to be supported with documentation and explanation, which was done in the presentations. And again, leases only to be used when it's really financially beneficial to the HOA. As far as the initial guidance, this was the initial guidance that was given for the 24 budget. Target wage increase of basically 4.5% maximum. Minimum wage is 4.5%, which probably involves at least 25% of our employees, maybe more. I'm not sure the exact number. Non-wage cost increases of 4% or less over 23. Net cash income to be about 2% of operating expenses, and provide 10-year projections for reserves and ops. So that was our original guidance that we gave. So then there was as Matt said, there was a lot of work done. There was a revised guidance that was done, that was given much more recently, basically to achieve operating expense increase to be a maximum of 4% over the budget, achieve wage increases to be a 4% maximum, which means obviously if you have a minimum wage for some of your employees that are 4.5%, that means, you know, the overall total is going to be 4%. So that is a challenge. Assuming CIF contribution to the reserves to be 100%. Significantly improving the interest income with investments to our accounts, both reserve and operations funds. Focus on the preserved restaurant net cost improvement. Focus on operations improvement costs for Mountain View Golf Course. Analyze the gas, electric, chemical usage of our pools. I see that's pool. Obviously, I didn't get spell check on that, but that's pool. And the decision was, the original request was to have 3 employees added to CAM to do all the extra work they've discovered they have to do. We cut that back. Staff cut that back, was willing to cut it back to only 1 additional employee to handle all the additional drainage demands and everything that we've discovered as we go into this process. So, and to investigate the theater revenue reduction. So the theater had actually forecasted a reduction in revenue, and we just wanted to have that checked out. So that was kind of a summary. There were more details, but that's kind of a summary of the things that were asked of the board much more recently to handle for draft number 2. So the next person up is going to be Walter, and he's going to talk about the process that the staff went through.
All right, thank you, Mark. What I'd like to do is, you've seen this timeline already a couple times, so I'm just gonna take this opportunity to kind of throw a little more details about what the staff had to do. You see, we've got direction in May, so we had 5 months that we worked through this budget process and provided 2 different drafts of the budget. And so we're here today, and then hopefully by December 2nd, we'll have the final approved, voted on budget out on the website. Now, the pressure that Matt talked about putting on the board, and you know what happens with that, it all rolls downhill, right? So, and who's at the bottom of the hill? The staff is. So we've got a lot of pressure on us to get this budget met. Okay, so against the, I've heard some comments from folks that say, I think the staff just throws numbers in line items and they don't think about it. Well, let me tell you, that's not true. In addition to all of these meetings, all of the finance committee meetings, I also have meetings with the staff where I bring them in every 2 weeks, and we drilled down on manpower, we drilled down on every line item they had. I've asked them to go back and look at the line items. The staff goes out and looks at trends, the consumer price index, what's that look like? They go and they say, are the utility companies going to be increasing their rates? What's the insurance companies going to do next year? There's a lot of research that the staff does. What's going on with construction? Is construction going to be more, hey, you know what? We can't even get folks out here to do concrete. There's a concrete available, but the contractors are not available. You have to pay them more because you have to pull them off of maybe some other lucrative job they have, and they come up here to do, 20, 30 feet of concrete for us. That's not very attractive to them, so you've got to make it attractive to them. So there's a lot of things that the staff does in order to put these numbers down in the budget. So, again, fertilizer. What's the fertilizer going to be? What's sand? What's the delivery? What's gas? So there's a lot of work that goes into these numbers. So, we don't just put numbers down on the line item just with a wild guess. So, all right, next slide. Let's go ahead and get into the budget. I'm going to just do a quick recap of assumptions, and then Terry's going to get up here and actually go through each department and point out different things within each department and their budgets. So starting off here, which I think you've already heard, which is good news to you, is the dues are going to be a 2.9% increase this year. So, we started at 6% on our first draft, and now it's down to 2.9 with a lot of cutting. So what does that mean to you? $3,600 annually. This was based on an average average number of houses to be 32,000 or 3,202 houses. We are planning on ropes in closing 25 new houses in the year of 2025. We are planning to have 108 resale in homes next year. Again, when you take these numbers and multiply it by the dues, 3,600, you come up with 11,527,200. But that number has to be split between how much you allocate to reserves and how much you keep in operations. We are directed to put 30% of that over into the reserves, so that puts $3,458,160 over into the reserve to replenish the reserve and to handle the different projects we're doing in the reserve side. And that leaves operations with $8,069,040. So Another thing that we were asked to do is transfer 100% of the CIF. Now, this is the fees we collect in '25 over to the reserves. Another assumption is the CPI is going to be 4% in 2025. And moving on, food and beverage, we're targeting an 8% increase in food revenue. I think we actually squeaked out a little bit more than that, but that was the target. Food and beverage expenses increased 5.2%. And again, the golf revenue, combined revenue to increase 39.94%. Golf combined expenses increased 10.03%. Again, we talked about wages, maximum 4% per department. Now, this is a little shady here because straight out, if we calculate 4%, we did that. But then now, on top of that, you've got to add in the fact that the people that are making minimum wage may go up to $15 an hour, so that's a 4.5% increase. And once you raise the minimum wage person up to the new $15 an hour, guess what? The guy that's making $15 an hour today is going to be like, hey, why am I only getting minimum wage? I've been here longer. So there's what we call a decompression. You got to move people up that are also above the minimum wage to make them right also. So when you do the calculation, it's not going to be exactly 4%. It's going to be a little bit higher because of all these different adjustments. In addition, you're getting a new COO, you're getting a new person in CAM, luckily. So, yeah, so it bumps it up a little bit more than that 4%. We talked about minimum wage increase, and then, of course, investments that the board has identified have been put in there. You know, of course, that's our guesstimate on the interest rate for the year. And one point that is kind of odd this year that you can see in the red letters there, we had a project this year in 2024 to do a lot of little repairs along Clubhouse Drive. And by the time we got through the different people that were willing to bid and got a bid and negotiated with them, then they came back and said, well, we can't fit you in the 2024 budget. Our schedule's too tight. Again, I'm talking about construction things. You know, so by the time we got that set up, they said, we can't get out to you until 2025, early 2025. So we asked Mark if we can take that money that was tagged this year and if we can move it on over into 2025. And that happens to land in the common area tab of the budget. So makes you look, I can see Mike shaking his head. So anyway, that covers the assumptions. And so then I'll turn it over for all the little details to Terry.
Okay, thanks, Walter. Keep that from falling out. Okay, so we're going to go through the 2025 draft budget in a little bit more detail. So we'll go ahead with this slide is our source of revenue and where all the sources of revenues come from for 2025. So we started this process, we started off with a 6% increase in dues, but we whittled that down by whittling down expenses to get to 2.9% increase in dues, which move our annual dues up $100 to $3,600. And that's on the far right. So we estimate that there's 3,202 rooftops for a total gross revenue of $11,527,200. We allocate 30% of this to reserves, which is $3,458,160. We're rounding that up to $3.5 million for simplicity's sake. This left $8,027,200 available for operations. There's $267,383 of other income that goes into operations as well, for a total starting revenue in operations of $8,294,583. Reserve fund, as I said, will receive $3,500,000 plus 100% of the CIF fees received. So we assume there will be 180 homes resold in 2025. They will pay $3,600 to the CIF, which is $648,000. Also, we estimate interest income of $193,000 from 2025 in the reserves. These revenue streams total $4,341,589 going into reserves. CIF fund will have revenue of $648,000, as mentioned. It will be transferred to the reserves. So CIF is estimated to receive $25,000 from Comcast and $52,000 for interest income that has been invested. Okay, amenities are expected to contribute $9,029,537 to revenue in 2025. And that's all the money's coming in, and it's everywhere that it's, each fund that it's going to. Okay, next slide. Okay, this slide shows a chart of all the revenues, operations revenues, which is $17.3 million. And going clockwise, fitness revenue will make up $253,842, which is 1.46%. Golf revenue, $4,287,455, which is 24.67%. Community service fees are basically the dues, is $8,027,200, which is 46.2%. Transfer fees and penalties, $129,200, which is 0.74%. Miscellaneous income is $190,183, which is little over 1%. And lifestyle is $71,160, which is 0.41%. And theater is $284,000 at 1.63%. So that's kind of the round out of where our operating revenue is. Okay, restaurants is F&B is $4,132,900, which is 23.79%. Okay, next slide. Okay, this shows the net profit or subsidy for each of our amenities. The 2024 projection is $1.6 million, and we moved that to $965,000 subsidy. So our larger amenities are showing improvements in 2025 budget from 2024 projections, and F&B is budgeting 27.7% increase, and golf is projecting a 55.3% increase. Overall, our amenities are doing better than 2024 reforecast by 40.4%. So we're projecting $1.6 million. That's the center column, $1.6 million, and we're bringing that down to $965,000 in subsidies for 2025. Okay, next slide. So these are our operating expenses. Total increase is 10.69% over the 2024 projection. G&A is increasing 6.38%. They're bringing printing, mailing in-house as much as possible in 2025, and there's a new COO starting in December. Facilities is looking at an increase of 6.61%. They are working on several cost savings initiatives, some of which are actually baked into the 2025 numbers, and we'll see that in a little bit. CAM is showing an increase of 23.4%. This includes the $143,000 Walter was talking about for the roads that is being carried over from 2024. Without that, CAM increase would have been 13.9%. Patrol is increasing 14.54%. It's mostly getting higher, is mostly due to getting higher pays for the patrol officers that was requested. Okay. So we're looking at $6,339,107 as projection, and going up to $7,016,667, which is a 10.69% increase. Okay, next slide. So this is a graph that's basically detailing or showing what the increases look like by year and by department. Every department's increasing. Common area has gone up, but that includes the $143,000 in it. G&A is probably going up the most, but there's a couple things that are happening in there that are driving that. So we'll see how next year progresses. Okay, next slide. All right, this slide shows our wages and burden. Our burden is employer payroll tax, workers' comp insurance, employer portion of health care, employer contributions to the 401k, and this wages and expenses together makes up 54% of all of our expenses. So it's very, very important section of the budget that we do. The wages and burden projection for 2024 is $8,421,032. This is 13.56% less than what the 2024 budget was. 2025 budget is 10.69% greater than what the 2024 projection was at $9,321,000. Okay. So a departmental recap, go through golf. Next slide, please. So 2025 Mountain View Golf Course ops. Mountain View is fully open now. So 2025, Mountain View is fully open. Troon launches the new rate sheet. We expect to get back to pre-construction revenue levels and then some. So that's some positives going on there. 2025 major expenses for Mountain View Golf Operations is their COGS, which is $158,000. Marketing is $20,000. Ice machine rental is $13,000, and Troon fees is $67,500. So those are the major expenses you'll see in the golf section. Next slide. Excuse me. So for 2025 Preserve Golf Course ops, they'll be leveling out of revenue since players have returned to playing Mountain View as well as Preserve. You have some shift in some revenue there. Troon launches the new rate sheet, and again, expecting return to pre-Mountain View construction revenue levels. So we're expecting some good things from golf coming up in 2025. And the major expenses that you'll find in the golf budget is COGS is at $122,035. Gas and oil, $12,600. Marketing is $20,000, and then Troon fees is $67,500. Okay, next slide. Getting more into golf maintenance, the 2025 Mountain View golf course maintenance. Mountain View reset has been completed, and there was a new director hired for golf course maintenance, and we'll see good things coming out of there in 2025. The major expenses for the golf course maintenance are operating leases. It's $135,036, and we tend to lease some of this equipment that is highly used and beat up, and it gets beat up as the years progress, and instead of buying it out at the end of the year, we just turn it back in and get another one. It's a better way of doing things than leasing it and then paying $1 to get out of it, but then still having something that's not functional or not working very well. So Mountain View water was $100,000, and we brought that down to $75,000 due to the work that was done at Mountain View. Sand's coming in at $82,500 and seed at $68,900. with fertilizer at $95,562. So big expenses coming out of there. Next slide. Preserve Golf Course. As I said, we have a new golf course maintenance director hired. Major expenses out of Preserve Golf Course, there's operating leases, again, that's $135,036. Water at Preserve is $106,786. And this is in contrast to what they're doing at Mountain View. So the changes they made save $25,000 a year just in water. Sand is at $92,500. The fungicides and herbicides are $89,964, and fertilizers $102,252. So those are the big expenses there. Okay, next slide. Okay, moving on to food and beverage. All right, 2025, next slide. Oh yeah, good, thanks. All right, so 2025 Mountain View Bar and Grill, the Brook, the Lynx, and banquets. They will be looking at changing the operation hours to better suit the needs of the community. This will help with salaries or wages. The Lynx wasn't getting the support it needed from players, therefore it will have limited offerings in 2025 with no bar service. This will save the wage expense and continue utilizing entertainment to bring in residents and eliminate the promotions of $5 for every $100 spent, and the birthday $5 promotion as well. That saves well over $100,000 a year. Okay, major expenses coming out of Mountain View are COGS. We have it in at 33% for food, which is $833,000. Washing linens is expensive. It's $40,000. Consumables was brought down from $20,000 to $16,000, and bands and performers is in at $48,000, which has been brought down from $60,000. Okay, next slide, please. Preserve. Again, changing hours to better suit the needs of the community. There'll be increasing covers and the number of covers and the price per plate we're looking at. More wine dinners, which are a very popular addition that's going on at Preserve. Major expenses, COGS we have COGS at 42%. It's currently running in the upper 40s, so that's going to be a stretch goal. That's going to be tough. So COGS is $573,295. Linens again, $18,594. Consumables are at $18,000, and bands and performers we reduced to $6,000 from $12,000. Okay. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Okay, moving on to lifestyles, theater, fitness. So lifestyles, they're adding some new active lifestyle aspects to the calendars of events, such as free movies, doing things like that. External rental of conference spaces for seminars. They're driving that as hard as possible. The major expenses that are coming out of lifestyles is equipment rentals. They're asking $6,400 for tables and for renting movies, and some supplies for a new projector and some audio-visual supplies, which is $7,350. Okay, next slide. Okay, theater, working on increasing attendance per show by increasing marketing. Average attendance, they're trying to get it from 350 to 380. They also rent space to the church as well, and that's part of their budget. The major expenses in there are ticketing fees, which are $19,000. That's paid per ticket for the shows. And then marketing is $24,600, and with repairs and maintenance, about $5,000 that goes into the theater, just general things that need to get fixed. Okay, next slide. Fitness increased revenue by increasing class fees and adding more time slots during the week. And some of their major expenses, which isn't much, is equipment of $9,000 and some supplies of $7,750. Those are the major expenses that they have. Okay, next slide. Going through common area, facilities, and patrol. Facilities, continued efforts to research equipment that will save money. As I said earlier, some of that stuff has already been put into the 2025 budget, but I'm sure Bill will have other things coming up during the year that he'll investigate, and we'll probably have some more savings in there that we don't know at this time what they are. Adding solar at the pools, adding chlorine storage tanks to help with the cost of chlorine and electricity. Their major expenses for 2025 in facilities is going to be electricity is $259,500, pool gas $112,000, cleaning services $165,000, and building repair and maintenance is $118,000. Okay, next slide. Common area. Common area continues working on level 5 and level 4 together, save some labor costs, and they're integrating projects to try and save labor, like what they did up at the Mountain View Pool, as far as working together with facilities and getting some things done up there to make it look nicer. Their major expenses are going to be chemicals, $33,500, water is $57,000, drainage way maintenance is $38,000, and then the road repairs and crack fill is $491,000, and that includes the $143,000 that's being carried over from 2024. Okay, and patrol. Monitoring the traffic volume in excessive speed areas. We changed the fees beginning January 1. The fees will be changed, or the violation fees will be changed. Radar signs have helped reduce the speeding that's going on, so that's taken that down quite a bit. And their major expenses are vehicles, repair and maintenance, $11,400. Fuel, $8,520, and monitoring systems, which is the alarms in all the buildings, $27,300. Okay. Next slide, G&A. And next. Okay, so G&A, providing residents with a friendly, efficient assistance through administration, human resources, IT, which runs everything, and marketing and accounting. So 2025, the major expenses within G&A are going to be the IT support, which is $170,651. You'll see payroll fees in there, which is Paylocity, which is a full-service system we use for payroll, just $69,258. Our audit and tax will be $50,190, and business insurance coming in at $167,194. So those are the major expenses there. Okay. Next slide is going to be reserves. Before I move to that, when I say, I should have said this at the beginning, but the major expenses are just line items that are larger, than the other smaller line items, which is obvious. But the major expense, of course, is wages and burden. So these things that I said are major expenses are aside from that wages and burden, which is, like I said, it was 54% of what we actually spend our money on. Okay. 2025 reserve budget. So this summary shows the 2025 anticipated expenditures. Mountain View, $919,000. Desert View, $130,000. Preserve will get $393,000. Property site is $382,000, and roads is $732,000, and golf is $765,000. So that's reserve expenditures of $3,324,267. Okay, and that's all I have for you for today.
Thanks, Terry. I just noticed I'm the only one facing this way. Everybody is facing that way. There's a reason for that, because it's broadcast on the back wall for those at home. So it's not me just drifting off into space. Anyway, we'll continue on. Finance. So I'm chairman of the Finance Committee. And as the Finance Committee has a responsibility, next slide, Rick. Finance Committee has a responsibility to review and make recommendations during the preparation of the proposed annual budget and submit recommendations relative to those budgets to the board in a timely fashion. Next slide. So what did we do? Briefly, we'll look at what we did. We took the steps we took where we had 7 open budget meetings over the past 100 days. We also reviewed the budget requests, director summaries, things like that that's been gone over. We'll look at our process. We'll identify some positives that we saw in the budget and some uncertainties or unknowns that are kind of the usual when you see forecasts into the future. Next slide. So our 7 open budget meetings. I'm going to be the 3rd or 4th person to go through this timeline, so I won't do it all. But I will say, I will highlight the very first meeting we had on July 18th. We looked at residents, clubs, and staff capital requests. That's open to all residents. Every year you can put in a request to stick something in the budget. Same with staff, and the same with the clubs. We had 78 requests. It was a 4-hour marathon meeting. We went through every one of those 78 requests. The committee vetted them, reviewed them. We made recommendations to the board, and those that we recommended and the board agreed with, put it in the budget. Those that the board did not recommend or we didn't think were worthy of it are not. So I won't go through the rest of the timeline because, as said, I'll be the 3rd or 4th person to do that. You've all seen that. Next slide. So what did we review? As I said, 78 capital budget requests from residents, clubs, and staff. We also looked at department directors' business summaries. That was another marathon meeting of about 3 or 4 hours. We looked at the integrated financial plan framework, because we're going to look at a 5-year plan and a 10-year projection this time around, which we haven't done in many years. And then we looked at the operating draft number 1 as well as number 2, which just came to the website a couple of days ago. We drilled down on operating capital reserve requests, line-by-line reviews, those types of things. We looked for the adherence to budget guidance, or board guidance, which you heard previously. We looked at the reasonableness of the assumptions. We looked at the achievability of those assumptions. Are they too aggressive? Are they not aggressive enough? And also the timing of reserve fund expenditures, always an exercise in looking at what we should do this year, what should we do next year, what should we push into the future more than just next year. That's always something that's ongoing and will continue to be ongoing. So, positives in the budget. What do we see that was positive? As I just mentioned, we're forward planning with a 5-year plan and a 10-year projection. Hasn't been done in many years. We're still working on that, or the staff and the board is still working on that. We have yet to see a finalized version. We've seen drafts, but not a finalized version. Dues increase of about $100 or 2.9%. That's about a little over $8 a month in dues increases, as we talked about. Basically in line with kind of the projected inflation for 2025 of about 2.5% to 3%. So it's in line with the overall inflation rate expectations. We noticed improvement in golf and food and beverage subsidies. We also noticed the elimination of the underperforming food and beverage loyalty program. If you didn't realize that, for every $100 you spent, you got a $5 credit. Didn't seem to carry a lot of weight to get people to move to the restaurants or not, so we're eliminating it. And that could save next year an estimated $126,000. Facilities and expense increases compared to kind of an annualized number for this year, about 5%. We're also going to recommend, I think it's been already approved, investment in a new system to save on pool chemical expense. Could save tens of thousands of dollars a year, with an earn back of about 3 years, a little under 3 years to earn your money back on cost saves, and for a useful life of 5 to 7 years, seems like it's an easy call. Also a positive operating cash flow in excess of all our expenses of about $100,000. Now, unknowns, uncertainties. The budget assumes no significant economic disruptions. How could it? We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Assumptions may be unattainable due to these unknowns. These are generalized as kind of things I throw out there. General and wage inflation factors. Inflation moves every month. We don't know what the wage compression is going to be next year, what the labor supply is going to be next year. It could be in our favor. It could be not in our favor. We just don't know that yet. Home resales of 180, new sales of 25. We're on a run rate here of over 200 sales this year. We ratcheted that back about 180. Seems reasonable, but it still is an unknown. Next slide. Page 2 of risks or uncertainties or unknowns. The golf and food and beverage revenue uncertainty, we don't know what the revenue is going to be. We hope everybody comes to the restaurants. We hope everybody plays golf, but that is kind of a month-to-month seasonality type of exercise that we look at. Just don't know. Unforeseen reserve item surprises. If something breaks, something goes wrong out of cycle that we weren't expecting and it has to be repaired, that's an unknown cost, and it could be a big one. Is $3.5 million reserve funding enough for 2025? It kind of goes back to the prior point. If we have an unexpected major break of something, a main line or some kind of issue that has to be taken care of immediately, that may not cover, the $3.5 million may not cover that. And of course, the other expected surprises, which we just don't know about. Last slide, I do want to thank our committee members. Rick, next slide. Do want to thank our committee members, and I'll need to say each name because each one of these people put in hundreds of hours of their time looking at this budget. It's not just the 20 hours of open meetings, I can assure you. Ray Adams, our vice chair, who's sitting in the front row here. Jim Cox, Bill Eigner, also in the front row. Duff Fletcher, also in the front row. Pat Les, also in the front row. See, they're all here, lending more of their volunteer time. Bill Mead, David Weig, and Rhett Benedict, our advisor, here as always. That is it from the Finance Committee. I'll give it to Mark.
Okay, so I'm going to go through kind of what I'd say is a summary of final comments is what it's called in the agenda. So basically kind of a summary of the things that at least I wanted to point out that I think are significant or worth mentioning. We've talked about it already, really reducing the dues to what we feel we could do to the 2.9%, reducing the increase in wages and operating costs to 4%, even though we know we're going to have to pay more for our hourly wage people. We're still charge that as being only 4%. One of the things that's been discussed is we're going to implement what we call a component method for preserve course reserve savings. Basically, this is we're going to split the reserves into 2 different savings accounts, and we're going to put the money that we need for the future preserve course in 2029 into its own account. It's not a guaranteed account. A future board can take the money out of it. It's not protected, but it is a standalone account that we can say is going to get us where we need to go. And then there'll be a second account which will cover us for all the other reserve expenses. So. Very big, large improvements in food and beverage and golf net costs, which is great to see. We hope the residents continue to support both those efforts, both those functions. Very large increases in projected interest income and operations income. As I've talked before, we've moved a substantial amount of money over into money market accounts. My plan is to have, at least in the reserves, the majority of the money in the money market accounts so that we can just move it back out when we need it. Operations, same type of thing, is to try to also keep that money that's at least stable into a money market account to earn interest. So that's a significant increase in interest income, which is also part of the budget. Plan that actually got approved yesterday, which I had recommended, was transferring $1.3 million from the ops to the reserves to pay off the 2018 golf course purchase that was an internal loan. The $1.3 million is the balance of the $2 million that was done in 2018. We've been doing $100,000 a year. We are moving the balance of it all at one time, still this year probably over to reserves. A real large increase in Mountain View course income since reopening. It's what we had hoped for, and it's what we've been seeing. That goes to the point of if you have a good golf course, people will come and play it. And so it's been great to see the gigantic income increase, which is one of the reasons why we are doing much better on our final end of year numbers for golf this year than what we had projected, is because the income has grown much more than we had hoped. Big investment in solar heating for the Mountain View pool, which should pay some good dividends from a cost standpoint. And as we mentioned, Bill has put forth his proposal for a pool water system for a significant reduction in cost. Those are included in the budget. The Troon Golf reorganization, which again should prove some nice benefits from a standpoint of having better quality for our golf organization, which is one of the contributing factors as to why we're showing such a gigantic increase in income to make that investment. And then, of course, the one big thing which we are all looking forward to help us long-term is having our new chief operating officer that we are getting on December 2nd. Next slide. Uncertainties, I'm going to mention same things that mostly Campbell just mentioned. Again, we're assuming the resales and new home sales. That is a projection based on history. May or may not happen, but we have to put something in. Assuming inflation for wages and non-wages to be 4%, again, the government data would indicate that that should be a safe estimate, other than our wage expense because of minimum wage is going to be a challenge. Assumes a continued improvement in F&B income. That is not controllable by us, but we have to assume something that the great increases we've had in people coming to the restaurants based on Alan's and his staff's efforts is going to hopefully continue. Also assumes continued improvement in the golf income. Troon has worked very hard to provide us a new data sheet, a new golf rate sheet, doing things to continue to improve the courses, to drive more revenue, more people to golf at our golf courses. It assumes an average money market interest rate to be 4%. It's above 4% right now, but it changes every day. So to be conservative, we've assumed an average for the entire year of 4%. And of course, the long-term financial forecast, as Campbell said, has all sorts of assumptions. And whenever you do any kind of planning, whether it's personal or business, you just have to make your best guess on the assumptions and hope that they're right. Next slide. So this gives you an idea for the dues for next year of what cash goes into each piece for the 3,600 dues. I'm not going to read the numbers. You can see the pie chart. I'll give you a minute to look at it. But as you can see, G&A is obviously a big cost. Reserves is the largest cost, no big surprise. It's one of the things we inherited from Robeson. We're having to put a lot more money in reserves to pay for our 25-year-old assets. So that's not any big surprise at all there. Next slide. If you do it as a percentage instead of dollars, which is just a different way of representing it, you can see again, reserves are at this point about 30%. G&A 24%, the two biggest pieces, and then you can see the facilities common area are really the two other large amounts of expense that we have. Those are the four big, things that we have to pay for. So as a summary, I want to make a point regards to what you might read on social media, is that Saddlebrook HOA2 is in a very strong financial position, far better than a lot of HOAs are. And so we shouldn't be worried about the financial position. Today we have over $12 million in accounts, as of October 25th. We've added Fidelity Investments for our operations fund to improve the returns with a money market. However, we do have challenges. So being in a strong financial position doesn't mean we don't still have some challenges. And the big challenge, of course, is the reserves. The lack of reserves we got handed to from the developer in 2018 with over 20-year-old facilities is something that all HOAs have to deal with. But the good news is that I think we have a 10-year financial forecast that allows us to meet this objective. You'll see more detail on that in the final November 20th, where we'll have some specifics for the 5-year financial plan. But we've been working real hard to make sure that we can meet that objective without a loan, without a assessment over the $300, and with keeping our dues competitive. So home sales continue to be strong. We've got lots of people moving in. Generally, the turnover on most homes, if they're priced correctly, has been very good. I know where I live, the homes don't last long. So the good news is that regardless of what you may read anyplace else, people are moving here and they see us as a really nice community. So keeping up the quality of our lifestyle is obviously a very high priority. We need to invest in our common area and our amenities, and this is critical not only for the enjoyment of the people who live here, it's critical for the future success of all of our home values. So the health of the HOA is something that's really important, and that we continue to make sure that the reasons people moved here continue to be reasons people continue to move here. One last point, this is a draft number 2. It is not necessarily the final draft, okay? There's gonna be continued work over the next 3 weeks before November 20th. However, I think this budget you've seen is very close to what we're gonna have, but there probably were gonna be some minor tweaks and changes, I'm assuming, as we get into it more. There's still a few things we need to check on, still a few reserve costs that we need to confirm over the next 5 years and things like that, So the next steps are the draft budget number 2 is posted that you just saw, and the next meeting, which is the final meeting, is when the budget gets approved, is November 20th at the Desert View Theater. So that is the final step. Yes. Oh, yes, that's right. The time has just been changed by Matt's request, so it is going to be at 8 a.m. instead of 10 a.m. This is a slide that was a couple days dated. So it is an 8 to 10 a.m. meeting right now as scheduled. So that is the end of all of our presentations. So at this point, I guess I would like to open it up for any Q&A that anybody has from either the board or the audience, I guess. I guess we'll take the board first. So I know the board's been involved in most of these meetings. But I don't know if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, I will open it up to the audience for any questions. Okay, I guess we did a fantastic job. Or everybody just wants to get the heck out of here. So anyway, I guess based on that, we will, well, you want to finish up?
Mark, I want to say thanks to all of our presenters. Thanks for your work in putting this together. I was sitting here, a lot of things are going through my head. I want to thank the community for your trust in enhancing our financial position by giving us the $1,500 assessment this year that paid off the Mountain View loan. That's making a big impact on everything that you're seeing up here. And so being debt-free is a wonderful place to be. I'm very happy that we got that accomplished as a team, and so thank you very much. I will report out to you that Darren Shaw, our Chief Operating Officer, closes on his home. He's bought a home here in Saddlebrook too. He closes on 27 November. He will physically be here on the 29th. And so everything's moving forward in that perspective. Really looking forward to approving this budget and the 5-year plan. It puts the community in a stable position as it looks to its future. So I thank you for your interest in what we've done here today. I appreciate your presence here, and if you're looking in at home, we appreciate you understanding all this too. Have a great day. Thanks.
Hey, Matt,
Yes.
is this on? Hello, okay, Matt, thank you very much. Thank you, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I didn't quite jump in there quick enough on the board comment piece, but I wanted to echo what Mark has said, and thank you for the work that the Finance Committee has done on this 2025 budget. The same is true with the work of staff. They put in incredible hours coming back to the same subject 2 or 3 times. And also I want to thank Mark and Matt specifically for just tons of hours on trying to get this thing organized and negotiated and worked on. So thank you both for all of that. I did want to end with a bit of a disappointment on my part, if I could. I'm going to recommend that the board close up the links as soon as possible. I don't see why we need to keep it open to close it up January 1 if we don't think January 1 is going to make any sense for us. So I think we should get on with it. I am incredibly disappointed that our golfers, the people that show up every day and play golf, couldn't support that project with enough beer and hot dog sales to pay for somebody standing there giving you the beer and the hot dog. It just, I can't believe it. I'm so disappointed because my vision of that was certainly even broader than what we currently have today, where we could someday enjoy a beer and a hot dog at the preserve. But we can't seem to figure that out either. So all I can say is keep bringing your cart full of your own beer and your own hot dogs, because that seems to be what we've trained people to do. But anyway, I do suggest that we go ahead and just close it up and get on with that. Thank you again for all the hard work. That's my comment.
So, Dan, I just want to clarify, when you say close it up, you're not saying, well, our plan was just to take the food and beverage manpower out of it.
That's exactly right.
Okay, but there will still be items that food and beverage will provide that can be sold, and you can just buy from the counter, so. Okay, I just wanted to clear that up. It's not totally closing down, we're just taking the food and beverage manpower out of it.
Exactly right. Thank you.
Well, welcome to board meeting number 2 this week. Thought we were going to just provide the 25 budget, huh? It's a fast-moving train, but I will say this. Collectively, for all of us, I think every one of us sitting here has learned an incredible amount. And the pressure we received from the residents in many areas has helped force us to think, to challenge our positions on things, and to make changes. And one of the big ones, this investing the operating fund in money markets and growing that interest, low-hanging fruit that was sitting there that we're now taking advantage of. And so Campbell and Mark made that happen, and I'm proud of them. You've been here long enough. Have a great day. We'll see you on the 20th of November at 8 o'clock. Have a great day.